Hello, this is Dr. Rhadi Ferguson, and in this particular recording, Dr. Rhadi Ferguson and Chris Round discuss grip fighting at the grassroots level and at the elite and or professional level. And we talk more specifically about stiff arming. Stiff arming seems to be a problem at the grassroots level and at the beginner levels, and not much of a problem at the elite level and the professional levels. We will talk about why that is, the subtle differences between the grip fighting at the different levels, and also help you gain some understanding of how you can beat your opponent when your opponent stiff arms. Please enjoy the recording and have a super fantastic day.
Okay, so here's the deal, man. I've been asked this question by people. I got on the phone with Jay Foster the other day, and I was having a hard time even understanding the concept of stiff arming because it doesn't occur in the environment in which I played. When I returned to Judo, 97, my 1998, I was fighting at the U.S. Open. All right, that was after not playing since I was 12. You made a solid point that it never occurred to me until you made it. So just explain what you said again.
So stiff arming wasn't done in the fashion you typically see at the grassroots level, at the level of play in which you were active. There are two kinds of stiff arming. There is passive and active stiff arming. Active stiff arming is common at the international and national level. No, because active stiff arming allows you to both cut off opponents' offensive abilities and for you to maximize yours. When Travis Stevens leads with his left hand and punches it to his opponent's right lapel, he creates an active stiff arm to set up his opponent's Sewanagi game. When Nick Del Popolo has his right hand on the inside against a righty, has it placed right at the shoulder, he can create an active stiff arm to gauge and create and minimize distance. The kind of stiff arming you typically see at the local and subnational level is passive stiff arming, where the reason why the differentiation is active stiff arming allows for consistent offensive abilities, and while it may lock down an area of the game, it leaves desired openings. Passive stiff arming is common amongst people who either A, are not very familiar with grip fighting, or B, and these, by the way, these aren't mutually exclusive, they can both be at the same time, or B, are just so afraid of being taken down. So you'll very commonly see, especially in a Brazilian Jiu-jitsu tournament, someone throw both hands at a lapel and just sit. I don't mean sit down for pulling guard, I mean just stand there, because they're controlling both shoulders and the other person can't turn to throw them. However, this doesn't work when you run into higher level players because it's a very easy game to break, but you have to be a very experienced, I don't even want to say very experienced, because it's actually the way you stop, it's very simple. I have to do with how you...
But remember, we're running into Dunning-Kruger again. The Dunning-Kruger effect. It's simple to us to stop because we have the solution. That's why it's not even looked at as an issue or a problem in our particular realm of expertise. But it is a problem for those that don't have that particular expertise, and they need to get that fixed. Now, you and I know that the fix is really grip fighting.
Yes.
But you really you got to really throw yourself into grip fighting, and you at the grassroots level, the way that judo is taught. At the grassroots level, if you're not taught by a Jim Pedro Sr. or Jimmy Pedro or myself or some other people, or even you and you teach, when we teach Ippon Sewanagi, we don't teach the person to do it to the left and also to do it to the right. We just teach them to do it to their dominant side at first, and then teach them how to stand righty and throw lefty, or stand lefty and throw righty, depending on if they're left-handed or right-handed. But we don't teach the changing the feet of both sides.
No, you learn a dominant side, and then later on, and you tack on those other things for offside techniques, or you teach what is is a dominantly right-side technique that allows for an offside throw, like it's a thigh.
Correct.
Or
but there's no switching of the feet. But people do that because they don't know how to grip fight. So going back to the stiff arm, in the Brazilian Jiu-jitsu context, I see it all the time. They come out, they double lapel stiff arm, and they wait for you to turn and try to let go or release one of the hands and grab a leg.
Yep. When I started competing, I mean, I competed before, but when I started seriously competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 2014, it was, I remember clearly, this is the Boston Open. I was fighting an older guy, a wrestler, who walked out, and the first thing he did was double stiff arm me. And I knew what to do with it, but I remember thinking to myself, this hasn't happened to me since I was 15. Because after the age of 15, I was fighting 90% of the time people who were at the brown and black belt level.
No.
Sorry.
You were fighting people who were at the brown and black belt level who had either trained with Jason Morris or Jimmy Pedro.
Yeah, I should clarify. I was fighting at the national level after the age of 15.
Exactly.
Yeah. Even at the junior national level, when you start fighting people who are medaling at junior nationals at under 20, at least in the middleweights, people tend to know enough grip fighting. Even if they don't really know grip fighting, they'll know enough not to sit on a passive stiff arm like that.
Right.
So
and the rules at that level and the dings for the penalties come quicker than they do at the local level.
Yes, because at the local level, they're not going to want to call penalties as quickly. One, mostly because at the local level, it's there for experience. You want people to fight it out. Oh, you always want people to fight it out whenever you can, but at the higher levels, no, you're going to get dinged for bullshit.
Right. And the conceptual framework of the training environment or the elite environment or those that desire to be elite is different than the grassroots or the recreational environment. Meaning, even today, if Chris and I get on the mat and we grip fight, we will grip fight under the current rule set.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't want to grip fight under the current rule set, we will agree, hey, you want to play by the old rules and you want to play by the new rules. But no matter what the situation is, we will grip as if the penalties were coming, because that is the definition of practice for us.
Mm-hmm.
Practicing at the level at which we wanted to play or at the level at which we have played or per an agreement on a rule set. Mm-hmm. At the grassroots level and in grassroots tournaments, most of those individuals are playing for recreation. They're not playing to make a jump to the nationals or the international level, or either haven't decided at that particular time. And the referees at that level, more often than not, are not used to seeing those penalties
level of play
quickly. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So the play is different. So stiff arming is an issue at that level. Getting thrown for your opponent in the first 30 seconds is an issue at the next level.
Yes. And this ends up swinging over into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu where there are no penalties for gripping at all, other than reaching inside the gi. So you can end up with, if you're not familiar with the upper-level grip fighting game, or even the mid-level grip fighting game, you can find yourself very frustrated if you took all this time to work with your coach to get that one judo throw or that one wrestling takedown you really wanted to learn in the limited time you have to learn takedowns in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And now you can't do it because you have some guy or some girl who has both your lapels and you can't turn.
Correct. And I've seen this is why you have to be aware of the rule set and the framework in which you're operating and having your kinesthetic conversation, because a tournament is nothing but a kinesthetic argument. One person makes a proposal, the other person agrees to your proposal, or they decline it and come up with a different proposal, one to win, one to lose, etc. And
yeah,
yes, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I was going to say the one advantage is that I can always throw in a rebuttal in the form of an elbow.
No, exactly. Or a hit his knee, but that also requires you to be a pretty experienced grip fighter to do that.
Yes.
Now, at the end of the day, judo is not what wins judo matches. Tactics and strategy are what wins judo matches. And your strategic approach and your tactical implementation allows you to brandish your technique. Now, you could be a black belt in judo and not have a high-level understanding of grip fighting and end up fighting a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-jitsu and never throw that person. And that person will say, see, judo is not effective. It's not that judo is not effective. It's that simple thing that you'd never learned in terms of grip fighting will stop you from accessing your whole judo game.
And I do disagree with you on one slight point. It's probably more semantics. Tactics and strategy are part of judo too. It's not that I'm not doing judo when I'm doing this. It's because I'm still attempting to end the conflict using the least amount of energy in the most efficient manner possible.
Correct.
Which falls under the guise of judo as a grappling art.
Agreed. And I say that for you. I don't know how long have we worked together?
We worked together on and off for 6 years.
Okay, so when I say judo, you understand what I'm saying. When I say judo to the people who are listening, they don't understand. When Chris and I say judo, I never say judo. To me is not about a throw. Judo to Chris and I is about a philosophical approach based upon off-balancing your opponent. The off-balancing happens on the mat. It happens off the mat. It happens in there's strategic off-balance. There's tactical off-balance. There's off-balance in terms of hours studying. There's off-balance in terms of the repetitions that have been done in the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain. There's a lot of different ways to create kuzushi. There's also a way to be effective and efficient. And that part is the judo that I'm talking about. The judo that most people practice, and because we're having this BJJ context, most people in BJJ say, oh, I'm going to practice my judo. And all they mean when they say judo, they only mean the hip tosses, the taotoshis, and the osotos. Everything else, like the teguruma and the fireman's carry and the katagurumas and the double legs, they attribute all the rest of that to wrestling.
They don't realize that judo itself is a conceptual paradigm.
Correct. It's a framework.
Mm-hmm.
It's a framework. And actually Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Jiu-Jitsu has a similar framework. I don't know what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's exact framework is because it has morphed over a period of time.
And not only that, but where judo, it's kind of like the difference between when you compare theology directed as under, say, the Catholic Church versus the various theologies directed under the Protestant Reformation. There are a lot of different voices arguing for different frameworks within Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. While in judo, you've mostly had a central group dictating the basic history of judo, dictating the basic conceptual framework of judo. Originally that was the Kodokan. It's now more become the IJF. Then that's not a perfect analogy either, by the way. It's just one way to look at it. So you could look at
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu isn't set because you have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, then you have Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and then you have I don't even know what you have. It's just not set. It's still forming, and then you have the IBJJF, and then you have another federation that just came about that had a world championship, and then you have Abu Dhabi who has their own history to grappling. And then you got people who say, yeah, but I do no gi jiu-jitsu, which is not sure what it is. I mean, it's you're doing catch wrestling. Do you understand what I'm saying? Basically.
No.
And catch wrestling may have a longer history than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Definitely in the United States. Okay. Right. So it's really tough to understand what their particular framework is, or one in which they operate under, and then it changes when you include sport. So you hear a lot of people say different things about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One person will say, well, Jiu-Jitsu was formed for you to fight. It's a fighting art. You shouldn't be promoted if you can't fight, blah, 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 blah. That's all foolishness, because that's not where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came from. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came from Judo. And if it came from Judo, it was not about fighting.
Yeah, it's about physical education.
It's about education, because it's an educational pursuit. Now, those who proselytized for Judo, the most effective way to proselytize for the thing is to do something that is sensational. So because of marketing and sensationalism, you send your best fighter out to go fight people who don't know how to fight, and then you say, my art is the best, in order to grow the sport or grow the art. That's sensationalism. Kimura and Maeda, it was never meant to be a fighting art. That's not the thing. Is it a martial art? Yes. But that is the jiu-jitsu part. The judo part is for play.
Yes. That's there's a reason why, and I say this actually liking the heel hook game, but there's a reason why you don't see a heel hook game in judo. Or in a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu contexts because of perception regarding safety. How accurate or how inaccurate that is, that's up in the air. But there's a perception regarding safety that goes into the physical education part of this and into those calculations regarding rule sets. But to swing back, ultimately when we
stiff arm.
Yeah, swing all the way, going from, conceptual philosophical conversations on, the origins of grappling frameworks to stiff arming. I think what people don't realize is it's not just understanding sleeve control. It's understanding how gripping works and how your body moves in a three-dimensional context. Yes. Exactly. Hey, you can stop up a double arm stiff arm just by how you shift and roll your shoulders. Or you can change that to a situation where nothing's gonna happen other than if they finally decide to go on the offensive, to a point where it's about a 70-30 situation, and in your favor. All right, and that's without carrying the hands off, and that's without trying to drag them around. That's just with simple shift of the shoulders. Now, if I'm fighting you and you get double stiff arm me, first off, I know you're not just doing it to stall me out. I know you have offensive ability off of it that I have to be cautious and aware of. But that's not really what we're discussing here. We're discussing how to deal with passive stiff arming. Active stiff arming, then you're having to get into really the high level gripping game and how to engage it, especially under the current judo rules, where I can put two hands on. I can't use 2-on-1 to take the hand off my lapel.
That is where you have to know, and this is going back to a different definition of the word, but that is where you have to know how to do judo.
Yes.
And that's what makes it boring, because in a quality sword fight against two good swordsmen, nobody's going to move.
Nope, you can't get within. You can't get within your desired area of incidence.
So both people stay, and that's why at the higher weight classes in judo, you see all these penalties and the stalling, and it's not that they're stalling; it's that the risk isn't worth the reward for you to come in and do a bad attack when somebody has both of your shoulders. I mean, it's almost like doing kata and getting hit with uki otoshi.
Mhm. I had a fight over the weekend that you saw. I told you about the videos, but I was fighting a guy who weighed me by about 100 pounds. He fought twice. In the match I won, I had 2 real attacks. Most of the match played out on the feet. And it's because I weighing 195, 200 pounds versus a guy who's 300 pounds and a competent grappler, if I'm underneath him, I'm not getting out. So you have to pick your shots. And that's even more so when you have 2 heavyweights fighting each other. I'm at least small and quick. And not that you don't have quick heavyweights too, but, you know, something happens, I'm athletic enough to cartwheel out. Oh, I haven't seen Teddy Reiner do too many cartwheels. I'm sure he can. But,
he can.
But I'm not seeing Tolls or from Germany when he gets thrown by Reiner, you know, cartwheeling out too often. Like you would see at 60 kilos with Peischer and Hooks or something like that.
I'll tell you what, man, it has been a new education for me since I opened up my judo club, because I see issues that were never issues. You know, it's like right versus right. I was telling Jay that right versus right. I punch my left hand and you punch your left hand. I mean, I'm trying to get your sleeve and you're trying to get my sleeve. I'm not worried about your hand blocking my shoulder. No, bro, I need your sleeve.
Mhm.
Once I get your sleeve, it's your
then
hand,
game on.
Your hand being there or not is not going to stop you from tilting over.
Mhm.
But I only have to take it off once I get your sleeve and you rip your sleeve away, and now I have nothing and you have that one hand on. And that moment that you rip away, when you rip away and your right shoulder goes back, before your right shoulder begins to come back forward, my right hand needs to be on your left hand ripping off.
Mhm.
You
need to reset right back to 0.
Correct.
You're at -1 and you need to get back to 0.
I need to get back to 0 because I'm behind in tempo. Now we're going too deep. But there's a lot. It's just there's a point where practicing stand-up in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu becomes futile.
There's definitely an opportunity cost that comes with it.
Until they change the rule set. The rule set as it is right now today, they have not put an importance on the takedown game. And the reason why they haven't done that is because they have to differentiate themselves from judo. Because old school Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 1996.
Oh, that looks like judo.
It looks like, right, it just looks right, exactly. So what's the difference? Well, there really is no difference, because if a judo person taught the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu beginners or the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu movement, then they all did judo. It's just that Jiu-Jitsu is so much easier. So
it should be clarified. It's not easy as in we're calling it just an easier, that's simpler. It's still highly complex. It's that 5 minutes of stand up is typically going to be much more energetically brutal than 5 minutes.
Okay, let me put it like this. When I tell people it's easier, it's like this. If I ask you to do a complex problem and stand on one leg, you would not do it as fast, or you may not be even successful as if you were sitting down and doing the problem. Because there are heightened neurological requirements that are necessary just by balancing. When you are on your feet, okay, you're using your large muscle groups with your legs a lot more. The spine is actually loaded. Your brain has to think about how to stay standing. Like, you don't really think about not falling down when you're walking. But your brain is calculating just like a robot would how my feet need to step so I don't fall down. When you get tired through the day or you're a little bit fatigued, the first thing you do is you get off of your feet. Yes, you can watch the television while you're standing up, but it's so much easier to consume the information from the television when you're sitting down because there are less neurological requirements when you are sitting down or in a supine or prone position than when you are in a standing one. That is what I mean when I say easier. People think I'm saying it's easier, like one sport is easier than the other, or one art is easier than the other. No. They're both difficult. It is easier in terms of the loading that occurs on the brain.
Yes. Yep. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Oh, no problem, man. I wanted to clarify, too. Like, when I'm talking to you, it's kind of difficult because we've been together for 6 years, so when I say something, I know what it means to you, but you also have to clarify because that might not be what everybody else hears. And I appreciate that.
There's one other thing you have to keep in mind, though, in terms of when we're talking about the opportunity costs. It depends on what you ultimately want to do. If you want to go win the absolute division at Worlds, you're going to need some judo because if I'm 140 pounds, I'm not pulling. I mean, if I'm pulling me out, maybe, but I'm probably not pulling guard when I fight the ultra heavyweight. Hey, that sounds like not a fun idea. There are some people who that will work for. If I'm Rafa Mendes, I'm one of the Miao brothers. But, you know, the average person, grip fighting gives you a way to be competitive when you are dramatically outgunned in terms of size and muscle. Because you're turning what would otherwise be a muscle game into a leverage game, which is the point of grappling in the first place. It's why Keiji Suzuki, weighing 220 pounds, was blasting guys weighing 300 plus. Because Suzuki, on top of having a brilliant throwing game, knew how to place his hands so that he wasn't carrying their weight the entire match.
Correct. Well, man, this was brilliant, but go ahead and close it off when it comes to stiff arming.
Well, the fact of the matter is, stiff arming is a problem at the low levels, and I don't mean low as in like I'm looking down. I'm saying when you're learning judo, stiff arming is a problem. And that said, if you take the time to study grip fighting and study a judo positioning, I think it won't be a problem anymore. It becomes a very simple thing to just swat off like a mosquito. Oh, and that's why you really need to understand gripping.
Let me tell you this. I have seen, and I said this in my last call with Jay Foster. I don't berate anybody sharing their techniques. Just like when we say lower levels of judo, that's not an insult to anyone who practices judo at a low club level. Because those individuals that are going and sharing the art and the sport and taking up their time, they are valued, they are needed, and they are appreciated. However, there's a difference between judo and judo prime, okay? They both look like judo, but judo prime is made for judo prime time, and the regular judo is not. Now, everybody who gets to judo prime has gone through judo. They've all done judo. But when you do judo prime, okay, it's for my mathematicians, you find out that the original judo is very different. Now, a lot of people who do judo and believe that they know judo and they have high ranks in the regular judo, they're not experts over in the judo prime, or what we call the performance judo area. So you can be 6th, 7th, 8th, dan and all that, and stripe, blah, 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 boom, boom, boom. And you may not know as much about performance judo as a brown belt that's been training at Jason Morris's place, or with me, or with Jimmy Pedro, or with Serge, or some other places like that. You just may not know. You may not.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just
There's nothing wrong with that, but don't go throwing your weight around thinking that you know, because you don't know. And I have seen so many of these videos about gripping out there that are absolutely different.
That's a very political way of saying that.
They're
They're
very different than the way that I was taught, and they're different than how I teach, and they're different than how I've seen it taught. And some of those things may work at certain levels, but I would be very cautious about following just anybody's grip fighting advice.
No, you need to be selective. Definitely need to be selective.
And that's it. Hey, Chris.
All right, man.
Thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
All right.